conversation. And for those of you who are on hold, don't worry, Teddy will come by and screen you. Poor Teddy. But Ted Mendenhall should be getting a Radio Silver Star for his performance over the course of the last 30 minutes. And to my knowledge, there has yet to be a casualty on his watch as well. And the only casualty might be himself by the time this night is over, because he is absolutely running ragged, trying to set things up in two different studios simultaneously while screening calls, while playing the commercials, while also hosting all of the different updates and booking our guests. First up tonight on the Western Exterminator Hotline is Mark Fisher, assistant coach of the San Diego State Aztecs, giving us a minute here out of their breakneck preparation as they get ready to get on a plane tomorrow around 1 o'clock or thereabouts and head out to Philadelphia. Mark, second straight week we get to have this chat, and I'm very much looking forward to it. Thanks for the time.
Greg, thank you. It's a pleasure.
All right, let's go back first to the Mountain West Conference Tournament. You guys got past Boise in a somewhat uneven game, particularly in the second half. You rose to the occasion to get that win. New Mexico, you were down big by the start of the second half, and it took a furious rally just to get the score back to respectable. On the way home from Vegas to San Diego, the feeling on the team, the feeling in the coaching staff, was this the fact that you fulfilled your seed? Was it okay, or did you guys as the coaching staff need to re-inject some confidence into the team? What was the dynamic like?
Well, I think the good thing about having the kids we have is I don't think you ever have to inject confidence when it comes to Jamal. So, and that permeates the rest of the group. We were disappointed, Craig. I mean, we had visions of going to Vegas and winning 3 games and cutting nets down. I think any team that has talent and feels like they're well prepared, you know, they have big dreams, and that was ours. So there was disappointment. I wouldn't say there was dejection, and I wouldn't say that there was a lack of confidence. But, yeah, we wanted to win 3 games, Craig. That was the goal, and there was definitely a level of disappointment that we couldn't fulfill it.
From there to being in the auditorium on Sunday afternoon to watch the selection show, I know you guys had seen all the projections, so you had to know that you were in. Does that keep the butterflies out of the stomach as the show begins, or is it impossible to let that creeping doubt enter your mind?
You know, I was talking to Tim Shelton right before the show started and just said to him, this is the greatest thing in sports. And I know it's not even a game, but it's just such a cool experience. And I think, Craig, we all felt really confident being in. I don't think any of us were nervous about getting into the tournament, but the butterflies about who you're going to play and where and when, and, you know, it's just such an amazing emotional experience. And to hear your name called it's just something you can't really replicate. It's amazing.
And does it really, for a coaching staff, is it like the perfect reset button? So all of those things that, in other words, you guys were thinking about on the bus ride home, or is it just kind of washed clean the second you see your name up there on the slate?
I think that's a perfect way to explain it. I think teams that have, you know, lost a couple games down the stretch, when you hear your name called on Selection Sunday, it breathes life back into you from a confidence standpoint, from an excitement standpoint. You're rejuvenated, re-energized, and I could definitely see that on Monday because we had a heck of a practice.
I appreciated the story that Mark Ziegler wrote about your video manager and the job that he did to get film quickly to the student athletes and to the coaching staff. For those who maybe didn't have the opportunity to read that, or you know, you never know what cross section you're hitting on a particular moment in sports talk radio. I just wanted to give you the opportunity to brag up your video manager, because that's the type of thankless work that really helps fuel a top-notch college basketball program.
Absolutely. David Velasquez was a team manager, turned practice player, turned walk-on who got to wear a jersey and play in a couple games. He became our video coordinator. He's got a great mind for the game, Craig. He'll be an assistant coach soon. And the work he does to prepare, you know, me and Dutch and Tony and Coach is unbelievable. The cuts he does, he has a mind for the game, so we don't have to sit over his shoulder and explain this is this or this is that. He knows what he's seeing when he cuts it, and he gets us every game the minute it's done. He's a coach. We feel like we have 6 coaches on our staff, even though they don't have that title. And he's been invaluable for us this year, for me and Dutch from a scouting perspective, for our players, and for Coach Fish.
We're talking with assistant coach Mark Fisher from the Aztecs men's basketball team. SDSU is a number 7 seed, and they will take on Oklahoma in the opening round Friday night from Philadelphia. The fact that you have to travel across country, Coach, speaking of Zeegs, putting it in his story right toward the end, that the Aztecs traveling to the East Coast 1-8. Any concern for that? The fact that it's a late night on the second night, does that help alleviate any concern?
The way I look at it, Craig, we went to Providence, Rhode Island in 2010 and played Tennessee, and we lost. And if you want to complain and you can say, well, we had to travel and, well, it was a late game, well, guess what? St. Mary's traveled and played in Providence as well from Moraga, and they won 2 games and made the Sweet 16. So we're not in the business of making any excuses or looking at things that could be potential pitfalls. We'll have a charter flight, it'll be 5.5 hours, but we'll get there. And we'll let the guys sleep in the next day. We'll have a whole day to adjust. I don't consider it a big issue. Obviously, we'd love to be in San Jose or Salt Lake and have a ton of Aztec fans in red and black in that crowd. We're going to have not so many in Philly, but we have every reason to believe that we can get the job done there, regardless of how far it took to get there, how long it took, and how many red and black fans are in the stands.
Mark, you guys obviously have been knee-deep in Oklahoma DVDs and cut films and the like. I'm sure your iPad is straining under the weight. So what have you seen? What can you share, at least, that you've seen?
Well, they're coached by Lon Kruger, who most Aztec fans will remember from UNLV. He's always been a terrific defensive coach, and that's no different here. They're a very good defensive team, very solid. They'll apply pressure when it's appropriate. They'll guard the ball hard. They'll deny our elbow entries and our ball reversals. So we've worked a lot on how to alleviate that pressure. Offensively, the only good thing about them, Craig, is they don't have a 7-foot, 265-pound guy to beat us up inside. They've got skilled athletic posts, kind of like us. They've got a 6'8", 220, and 6'9", 230. But they're very, very skilled. They play a lot of ball screen, pop, and drive with those posts, which makes it hard because you got to run back and close out a skilled post player. They have a terrific shooter in Stephen Pledger, who's I saw make 5 threes in the first half against Texas, and I started sweating and had to go dunk my head in the sink. But Romero Osby is probably their best player, Craig. He starts at a center position. He's really more of a power forward. Terrific all-around player, can shoot it, can drive it, can post up, and we're going to have to put a lot of eyes on him and figure out a way to limit his touches and limit his productivity. He was a first-team All-Big 12 player.
How much of what you see is Lon Kruger classic where you go, yeah, we saw that at UNLV. He's just brought that on over from Sin City to Norman, or how much has been tailored specific to the talent he has with this Sooners team?
I think he's done a really good job of both. There's certain things, there's certain wrinkles to plays and certain action that we laughed. And, there's a certain screen they run that we call the Joe Darger screen, which that's, going back about 8 years to a power forward Lon had who he'd screen along the baseline for jump shots. So there's certain things he does, but you're right. He's tailored to his personnel. A lot more pick and pop, as I mentioned, for his skilled post players rather than pick and roll and let the guard operate. It seems that the focus has shifted a bit toward stretch that ball screen, make the big man guard the guard, and then swing it back to the post player so he can shoot or drive and create a mismatch.
We're talking with Mark Fisher, assistant coach from the San Diego State Aztecs, and the Aztecs will be flying on that charter flight tomorrow to Philadelphia. Mark, we spent a lot of the first hour of the program tonight talking about sportsmanship, particularly in youth sports. It was built off of a video that's up on YouTube of a Little League kid, one of those kids who's the man among boys, hitting a home run and just giving all the swag that you'd expect from any big leaguer as he was making it around the bases. As a coach in basketball, to me, the subject of sportsmanship is another interesting one to broach because you guys, first of all, of course, encounter it during the course of, for example, conference play with the effect the show has on a visiting team or the things that your student athletes may hear from opposing student crowds out on the road. But there's also that element of showboating, showmanship in a young athlete that you might want to cure him of, but at the same time you might be recruiting him.
Right. It's such a fine line we walk, Craig. I mean, you want young people to have fun doing what they're doing, and you want them to enjoy it and be energetic and emotional, but you never want it to cross that line to where it's offensive or directed at the other team or the other team's fans. And, with our guys, Coach always says, have fun, but always show respect. And I think in our league you have a ton of guys that just go at it. But when that, horn goes off, there's a lot of hugs and high fives and a lot of respect that goes around. But you're right. We've heard some brutal things on the road, and I'm sure the show has gotten into people's heads as well. So it was such a fine line to walk to let players be themselves and be emotional and let fans express themselves without crossing that line.
Earlier on these airwaves this afternoon on Darren Smith's show, Jamal Franklin said with a smile on his voice that he thought he was the most hated player in the history of the Mountain West Conference. But when you've got that type of swag on the court, when you've got that type of attitude, but also you have the ability to kind of absorb the trash talk that you hear from opposing fans and let it roll off of you, I mean, I guess you kind of help generate that atmosphere yourself in a way with your play.
Yeah, that's true. And some guys, as you mentioned, can't handle it, and some feed off of it. Back in the early 90s, Coach had a guy named Jalen Rose on his team who was one of the sweetest people I know. But on the court, he was, he had all that swag, as you mentioned, and he wasn't afraid to chirp in an opponent's ear. And I remember a game at Illinois, the fans just let him have it. It was the worst trash talk I've ever heard in my life, and I think Jalen had about 35. And I think Jamal is one of those guys who, as long as he doesn't try too hard, that's always the key. When you hear people chirping at you and saying things about your family, sometimes, especially for a young guy who's talented, you might want to try to take the game over. Jamal has been pretty good at, even when that happens, at kind of letting things come to him. So that's kind of the way I feel about that situation.
Mark, I really enjoy our conversations. It's been fun here filling in for the coach the last couple of weeks. And when he's back next week, I hope you are on talking about a team that is active and preparing for the Sweet 16.
Me too, Craig. It's going to be a battle with the Lon Krugers of Oklahoma, but we're confident we can get a win. And then after that, who knows? But I hope to be back on Tuesday, as you said, talking about who we're preparing for the next weekend.
It's going to be a lot of fun, and go Aztecs.
Thanks so much.
All right, Mark Fisher there on the Western Exterminator Hotline.